Here are 8 brushes that are already in Procreate, and I will show you how you can get the most out of them. We'll start off with the smoke brush. You can find it under Elements, over here, the smoke brush. Now to make realistic smoke with this brush, the first thing we'll do is create a dark background. Open your layer menu, tap background color, and then double tap here to grab black. And then for the color of the brush, I would suggest a bluish color, slightly grayish blue. Now I have the opacity of the brush at 75% and the size is at 100. And now if you press harder, your stroke will become bigger, and if you press lightly, it'll get smaller. So let's start over here and make a wiggly, irregular shape like this. Now the trick to make the smoke look more realistic is to add some blur. We'll go to the magic wand and then to Gaussian blur. Set it to pencil here at the top, and then switch your pencil to an airbrush, like the soft brush here at the top. I have the opacity of this brush at 80% and the size at 25. And then go over the top area of your stroke here, of your smoke. And then slide your finger to the left on your screen to decrease the amount of blur. So you get something like this. And you could go over again with your pen to blur it even more at the ends. And then you just tap the magic wand to get out of here. And this is how you can use this smoke brush to create realistic looking smoke. Next up is the Oceans brush. You'll also find it under Elements, over here, the Oceans brush. And let's grab a blue color. I have the opacity of this brush at 90% and my size is at 50. And now we can add some of these strokes, horizontal strokes. And as you move towards your horizon, you can make the brush a little bit smaller, like 30%, since it's more in the distance. And you can make multiple strokes overlapping. And now we can make a sky, a gradient in our sky. Let's tap the plus for a new layer and drag that underneath. And then for our brush, we can go to the soft brush under airbrushing. And let's just stick with this color. And then add a gradient like this. Use less pressure at the bottom, more at the top, because the sky near the horizon is lighter than here at the top. And to make the ocean look more realistic, again, we can use a blur. You need to go to your oceans layer, then to the magic wand, Gaussian blur, then set it to pencil and use your soft brush. Let's make it a little bit smaller, 15%, and go over the top. And then slide your finger to the left to decrease the blur. And then just tap the magic wand again to get out of there. Next up is the Rad Brush, which you can find under Vintage, over here at the bottom. Now this brush is great if you want to create really expressive, bit more stylized bushes. You can start with a dark green, somewhere around this area. The opacity of my brush is at 100%. Of course, you can play around with the size. I'll set it to 50. And then you can make a rounded shape like this. And then you can start layering lighter colors on top. And of course, you can also play around with your brush size, going lighter and adding those lighter touches at the top of your bush and keeping the lower areas a bit darker. And of course, besides bushes, this is also great for foliage and your more expressive landscape paintings. Another brush you might want to use for your landscape paintings is the wild grass brush. You can find it under Organic. Over here is the wild grass brush. And this brush follows the direction of your pen. So if you hold it like this, it'll go down. And if you hold it like this, it'll go up. So that's a great thing to know if you want to paint realistic looking grass. And I would also suggest playing around with different colors, layering different colors of grass on top of each other. And that way creating a realistic effect, starting in the background and then moving towards the foreground. Next up is the Flames brush. You can find it under Elements. Just like the Smoke brush, it's over here, our Flames brush. And in this case, I would also recommend using a dark background. So you can go to your layer menu, tap background color, set it to black. And then for our brush color, let's go for something bright red. And then let's make sure that we lower the opacity of our brush a bit. Let's set it to 40%. And I have the size at 45. Now let's start here at the bottom and make these shapes for our flames. Wiggling up, using more pressure at the bottom. Now in the center, the flames will be a lot lighter. So let's go for a color that is less saturated, like this. And then go over the center area a bit, creating that light, very bright area. And then just like with the smoke, the trick to get this to look more realistic is by adding some blur. So we'll go to the magic wand, then to Gaussian blur, make sure to set it to pencil, and then grab the airbrush, the soft brush, go along the top area, and then use your finger to lower the blur to, for instance, 6%. And you can use that brush to blur even more if you like. And that way, get a more realistic looking fire. Now, on a quick note, if you want to get even more out of your Procreate brushes, learn more about digital drawing and painting, then my Patreon is the place to go for you. I have more than 200 tutorials there, and you'll get a whole bunch of extra brushes. So go check that out. It will be great to see you there. I'll just leave a link for you in the description. Next up is the short hair brush. You can find it under Materials, and then scroll down, and here at the bottom you'll find short hair. And you can have a lot of fun with this. You can use it for realistic looking animals, or we can just make a fluffy little thing. Let's just grab a blue, for instance. Now the opacity of my brush is at 100%. The size is at, well, let's set that to 50. And I'll just make a little fur ball by making these outward strokes. And now we can go a little bit lighter, add some color variety. And just layer different shades of blue on top of each other. Layer upon layer. For instance, until you have something like this. And then the trick is to tap and hold the smudge tool to make that switch to the short hair brush. And let's keep the opacity at 100%. Let's set the size to 50. And now you can use this as a smudge tool to soften the hairs and to make it look extra soft and fluffy. And then to turn this into a cute fluffy hairball, you can make a new layer on top of this by tapping the plus. And then for instance, we can go to the inking brushes. I use the studio pen. Let's grab a white by double tapping here. And add two eyes with white, then with black, just double tap here. Add these pupils, and now we can make a layer underneath. On top of this one, we can add some more black around here. Then we can tap the N on this layer and set it to multiply. Then we'll go to the magic wand, to Gaussian blur, and slide your pen to the right to make this blur. And then tap the M here and lower the opacity. And this way you can make loads of these fluffy hairballs. Next, I'd like to show you how you can get the most out of the water brush. First, let's grab a blue. Something like this. Let's drag it on here. And then let's go to the elements brushes and use the water brush. Let's stick with this color. And then the opacity of the brush is at 100%. The size is at, well, let's set it to 30. And then let's just go over the entire canvas like this, adding this effect. Don't lift your pen. And then let's add a lighter color by dragging in this direction. And then go over again for some variety. Now this is nice for a top-down view of a swimming pool, but I would like to put it into perspective by going to the arrow up here, the Move and Transform tool, then set it to distort, zoom out a bit, let's move this down, and then use these handles like this to put this into perspective. So here we just drag down, and here we pull out. Then we can tap the arrow again to get out of here. And then we just need that extra effect by using a blur. We can go to the magic wand again, then to Gaussian blur, set it to pencil. Then for the brush, go to the soft brush, and then go over the top here. And then don't forget to use your finger, slide to the left to lower the amount of blur. And this way you can create this water effect in perspective. Finally, I'd like to show you a great way to use the Spires brush, which you can find under Organic. It's right here at the top. But first, before we use this, let's create a simple shape. Let's just use the Studio Pen under Inking. And let's grab a dark gray like this. And let's just create a rock shape. Something like this. Drag in the color, because the Spires brush is great for adding texture to rocks. We'll make a new layer on top of this. We'll tap the plus. Then we'll go to the Organic brushes and grab the Spires brush. And then let's grab a darker gray. Now the opacity of this brush is at 100%. You can play around with the size. Set it to 45%. And then just create a texture like this. Then we can go to the layer menu, tap it, and use clipping mask so that our texture will only show up on our rock shape. And then you can go to the Move and Transform tool, set it to warp here, and then you can actually wrap the texture around and make it look exactly the way you want it to. And then when you like it, you can tap the arrow to get out of here. And if you'd like to add some lighting to your rock, you can make a new layer on top by tapping the plus and then set that new layer to clipping mask and then tap the N and set the layer blending mode to screen to add highlights. And you can use a textured brush for that. For instance, one under the charcoals, like the charcoal block. You can grab a lighter gray. And then you can go over the area that you would like to lighten up. And you'll still see the texture. And you get a lot of control this way because you can just tap the S and use the slider to play around with the opacity. And you can do the same thing to add shadow effects by tapping the plus, setting that new layer to clipping mask, then tapping the N, and this time setting it to multiply. And then you can add shadow effects as well. Now these were 8 Procreate brushes and how you can get the most out of them. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, and then I'll see you next time for the next tutorial.